Well, my psychiatrist told me that in the 70s. He said, you have amazing brinksmanship. You know, you go to a certain place.
You go to the brink.
You know when to pull back.
I had in the clouds dream to him, but at the end of his life, he took my hand and told me that I'd made my dream come true.
He did.
Yeah.
Iggy Pop is the true godfather of punk. Wild, raw, and unstoppable. With the Stooges, he ripped apart rock's rulebook and showed the world what danger sounds like. But Iggy never had time for anything fake or safe. To earn his respect, a band had to be real, raw, and fearless. Today, we're diving into the music that lit his fire. The 6 bands that Iggy Pop loved with a passion. Number 1. The Doors.
I like to do a song that, or a piece of music that's just a pure expression of joy.
It all began with a shaman in leather pants. Before he was Iggy Pop, he was James Osterberg, a thoughtful and curious teenager from Michigan. In 1967, he went to a concert at the University of Michigan that would change his life forever. The headlining band was The Doors. What he saw on that stage wasn't just a singer performing songs, it was a captivating and dangerous piece of performance art.
Served a function. It gives a lot of people with the same station in life.
He watched as the frontman, Jim Morrison, seemed to go into a trance, challenging the audience, screaming, whispering, and blurring the line between a rock concert and a chaotic, unpredictable ritual. Morrison wasn't just singing to the crowd, he was confronting them, teasing them, and seducing them, all at the same time. For the young James Osterberg, this was a mind-blowing revelation. He realized that a frontman didn't have to just stand there and sing. A frontman could be a poet, a fighter, a preacher, and a threat, all in one. This experience planted a seed in Iggy's mind.
You know, to me, Jim was just a normal guy, that he didn't seem anything out of the ordinary.
He had been a drummer in his early bands, sitting safely at the back of the stage. But after seeing Morrison, he knew he had to be out front. He wanted to channel that same electric, confrontational energy. He loved that Morrison wasn't trying to be friendly or liked. He was trying to provoke a reaction, any reaction. The Doors' music also had a huge impact. It was dark, bluesy, and hypnotic, with long, sprawling organ solos and poetic, often disturbing lyrics. It was so much more strange and sophisticated than the pop music on the radio.
That will probably be just straight poetry, you know, and then we'll get back into the form later.
It showed Iggy that rock music could be serious, intelligent, and scary. He took the theatrical danger of Morrison's performance and stripped it down to its most raw and physical form, adding his own athletic, animalistic energy to create the persona of Iggy Pop. The connection was so strong that it almost came full circle in a legendary, though unconfirmed, rock and roll story. After Jim Morrison died in 1971, the remaining members of The Doors were looking for a way to continue.
The mood I get from most of it is kind of a heavy, kind of sort of gloomy feeling.
According to the band's keyboardist, Ray Manzarek, they seriously considered asking Iggy Pop to step in as their new singer. They saw in Iggy the same wild, shamanistic spirit that their friend Jim had. While it never happened, the fact that they even considered it shows how perfectly Iggy had absorbed the lesson he learned that night in Michigan. He hadn't just copied The Doors, he had become the heir to their specific brand of beautiful chaos, taking their psychological danger and making it thrillingly physical. He found his stage persona in the fire of a live concert, but he found his swagger in the flickering light of a black and white television screen. The Doors gave him his stage persona, but another band gave him his swagger. To see who taught him how to move, subscribe now. Number 2, The Rolling Stones.
But I mean, when it does happen, it's we're either loved or hated. You know, the kids hate it, kids love us and the parents hate it.
Long before he was crawling on broken glass or smearing himself with peanut butter, Iggy Pop was a teenager mesmerized by the televised strut of another legendary frontman. In 1964, a concert film called The TAMI Show was broadcast, featuring some of the biggest stars of the day, including James Brown and the Beach Boys. But the band that caught the young Iggy's eye was a group of scruffy, arrogant-looking guys from England called the Rolling Stones. He was completely captivated by their singer, Mick Jagger. While other singers stood still, Jagger moved with a slinky, almost feminine energy, shaking his hips, pouting his lips, and oozing a kind of raw, rebellious charisma that Iggy had never seen before. It was a performance of pure, unapologetic attitude. What Iggy saw in the Rolling Stones was a different kind of rebellion from the more clean-cut image of the Beatles. The Stones were rough around the edges. Their music was loud, raw, and deeply rooted in the dirty sound of American rhythm and blues. They didn't just play pop songs. They played greasy, distorted versions of songs by bluesmen like Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. This was the music that Iggy and his friends were listening to. Seeing the Stones take this raw blues sound and amplify it with their own sneering, youthful energy was a massive inspiration. It gave him and his future band, the Stooges, a blueprint for how to channel their love for the blues into something new, loud, and aggressive. The Stooges' early sound was, in many ways, an even more distorted and primitive version of what the early Stones were doing. The anecdote of Iggy watching the TAMI show is crucial because it shows what he took from Jagger.
You were talking about women, you were saying about how nice they are and how they shouldn't be attacked.
It wasn't just the dance moves, it was the entire concept of a frontman as a physical and sensual force. James Brown was on that same show and delivered an incredible athletic performance. But Iggy has said that Jagger's performance was the one that truly spoke to him. He saw a guy who was skinny like him, not a big, muscular man, who was using his body in a provocative and powerful way. This gave Iggy the confidence to use his own wiry frame as his primary instrument on stage. The early Stooges would often play covers of blues standards, just like the Stones did, but they played them with a level of feedback and noise that was even more extreme. The Rolling Stones showed Iggy that you could be rooted in tradition while being completely modern and rebellious, a lesson he would take to heart and push to its absolute limit. Jagger showed him how to move, but a cheap three-chord garage song would show him what to build. Number 3. The Kingsmen.
And about 9 o'clock, we heard a knock on the door, and we went, and here's a very tall man with a good-looking business suit who flashes a badge and says, "Hello, I'm from the FBI."
For all the talk of high art, dangerous poetry, and shamanistic frontmen, the true musical foundation of the Stooges' sound can be traced back to one gloriously dumb, brilliantly simple, three-chord party anthem. That song was Louie Louie, and the band was the Kingsmen. In the mid-1960s, Louie Louie was a massive, controversial hit. It was a perfect piece of garage rock. The sound quality was terrible, the guitar solo was clumsy, the beat was primitive, and the singer's lyrics were so slurred and incomprehensible that many people were convinced they were dirty.
Actually, Louie Louie, compared to what I've heard in rap music, was the cleanest song ever recorded.
In fact, the FBI launched an official investigation into the song to try and decipher the lyrics, a detail that only made it cooler to teenagers everywhere. For the young Iggy Pop, this song wasn't just a hit, it was a sacred text. Iggy has said in many interviews over the years that the Stooges were, at their core, just trying to be the Kingsmen. He believed that the song Louie Louie contained the great American rock riff. It was simple, powerful, and endlessly repeatable.
Actually, I could tell you one little high school trivia. We did play at Bill Clinton's high school.
Oh, all right.
I don't know if y'all care for Bill, but...
It was the sound of teenagers in a garage with cheap instruments making a joyous, energetic racket. This was the exact opposite of the complex, professional music that was popular at the time. Louie Louie was music that anyone could play, and that was its genius. It gave Iggy and the other Stooges, Ron and Scott Ashton, a formula. They weren't trained musicians, and they didn't want to be. They wanted to create a sound that was raw, primal, and powerful, and Louie Louie showed them how. The entire structure of the song, a simple driving riff that repeats over and over while the singer shouts over the top, became the blueprint for some of the Stooges' most iconic songs. Take a song like I Wanna Be Your Dog. It's built around a brutally simple, three-note riff that just repeats with hypnotic, menacing power. Or think of No Fun, another song built on a simple driving chord progression that just hammers away. This was the lesson of the Kingsmen. You didn't need complicated chord changes or fancy solos to create something powerful. All you needed was a great riff, a strong beat, and a whole lot of attitude. Iggy loved the raw, almost accidental energy of the Kingsmen's record. It sounded like it could fall apart at any second, and that's what made it so exciting. He took that feeling of barely controlled chaos and made it the centerpiece of the Stooges' sound. He learned from the Doors how to perform, and he learned from the Rolling Stones how to swagger, but he learned from the Kingsmen what to actually play. This simple garage song gave him a formula, but a band from his own backyard would give him a brotherhood and a battlefield. Number 4. MC5, Motor City 5.
We were already kind of established a bit, to the point where we were able to go and be a headline act in some theaters.
To truly understand Iggy Pop and the Stooges, you have to understand the fire, noise, and fury of late 1960s Detroit. At that time, the city was a tense and exciting place. The auto industry was in flux, and there was a feeling of post-industrial decay and political anger in the air. This environment created a desire for a new kind of rock and roll, one that was louder, more aggressive, and more confrontational than anything else. You can't tell that story without talking about Iggy's brothers in arms, friendly rivals, and fellow sonic warriors, the MC5.
I didn't survive the arc of the MC5.
The Stooges and the MC5 were the two pillars of the Detroit rock scene, and their relationship was a mix of mutual respect and intense competition. The two bands grew up together, playing the same clubs and sharing the same stage, most famously at the legendary Grande Ballroom in Detroit. The MC5, led by singer Rob Tyner and guitarists Wayne Kramer and Fred Sonic Smith, were like the political older brothers to the Stooges.
It didn't last very long, but it gave me that first feeling of playing with some other instruments, and being on stage.
Seeing the MC5 live was a powerful experience, and it pushed Iggy and the Stooges to be even more extreme to keep up. There are countless anecdotes of the two bands trying to outdo each other on stage. If the MC5 played a wild set, Iggy would feel the need to do something even crazier, like jumping into the crowd or inventing the stage dive. This friendly but fierce rivalry created an environment where both bands constantly pushed the limits of what a rock performance could be. Beyond the rivalry, there was a deep sense of brotherhood. They were two bands against the world, creating a brand new sound that the mainstream music industry didn't understand. Iggy respected the MC5's musical skill and their political commitment, even if his own band was more focused on personal and psychological chaos rather than political revolution. The MC5's high-energy, guitar-driven sound was a constant source of inspiration and a benchmark to measure themselves against.
The worst kind of matter, it was... But he really did. I mean, he really took a dump on that part of their show.
Iggy has often spoken about how important the Detroit scene was, a place where bands were encouraged to be original and powerful. The MC5 were the undisputed kings of that scene when the Stooges were starting out, and their powerful presence forced Iggy and his band to become tougher, wilder, and more unique in order to make their own mark. They were two sides of the same Detroit coin, one political and one personal, but both forged in the same fire. His Detroit brothers pushed him to be wilder, but a band of black-clad artists from New York would challenge him to be smarter. Subscribe to see who refined his chaos. Number 5. The Velvet Underground. While Iggy and the Stooges were busy making a beautiful primitive racket in the industrial Midwest, a parallel universe of dark, minimalist, and artistic noise was being created in New York City. That universe belonged to the Velvet Underground, a band that Iggy Pop both deeply admired and fiercely competed with. Led by the cool, detached songwriter Lou Reed and the classically trained experimentalist John Cale, the Velvet Underground made music that was unlike anything else.
I'd been interested more or less with what would happen if a Raymond Chandler wrote a rock and roll song. I tried to do that with a thing called Street Hassle.
When Iggy first heard their debut album, The Velvet Underground and Nico, it was another life-changing moment. He recognized a kindred spirit in their droning guitars, their steady, hypnotic rhythms, and their shockingly honest lyrics about the dark side of life, including substances, strange characters, and street-level decay.
Music and rock and roll songs in particular that were aimed at adults didn't have anything to do with the art world.
He was impressed, but he was also competitive. He felt that the Stooges could take that same level of darkness and make it even more raw and powerful. The most important anecdote connecting these two legendary bands comes from the creation of the Stooges' classic 1969 debut album. The record label, Elektra, hired John Cale, who had recently left the Velvet Underground, to produce the album. This created a fascinating clash of two different schools of noise.
And we took care of the music. And they took care of films, they took care of lights, and they took care of dancing, different people. And it would change sometimes.
Cale arrived with his avant-garde, artistic sensibilities, wanting to shape the Stooges' raw sound. He had ideas about adding instruments like the viola, which he played in the Velvets, and layering the sound with more complex textures. The Stooges, on the other hand, just wanted to plug in, turn up their amplifiers to 10, and capture the raw, untamed energy of their live show on tape.
You could get, at the very least, get a good laugh out of me. And then if you wanted more than that, it would be there too.
There was a creative friction between them. Iggy and the band respected Cale immensely, but they resisted some of his more arty ideas. This push and pull is what makes that first Stooges album so brilliant. You can hear both sides of the struggle. The album has the raw, brutal power that the band wanted, but Cale's production gives it a strange, dark, and minimalist atmosphere that it might not have had otherwise. He managed to capture their primal energy while giving it a cold, menacing clarity. For example, Cale had Iggy sing the lyrics to "I Wanna Be Your Dog" over the phone to get a distorted, distant vocal sound. And the famous one-note piano plinking throughout that same song was Cale's idea. Iggy later admitted that while he fought with Cale over some things, Cale's influence was crucial. He taught them about texture and dynamics, helping them turn their raw noise into a true work of art. The Velvet Underground were their art rock rivals from another city, but it was one of their own who helped the Stooges make their first definitive statement. A rival from the past helped him create his first masterpiece, but it would take a disciple from the future to help him create his last. Number 6. Queens of the Stone Age. Decades after he first exploded onto the music scene, after years of ups and downs, Iggy Pop proved his eternal coolness and artistic vitality by joining forces with a modern rock giant who had worshipped him since he was a kid. That giant was Josh Homme, the leader of the powerful and stylish desert rock band, Queens of the Stone Age. Their collaboration resulted in the 2016 album Post-Pop Depression, one of the best records of Iggy's entire career. The story of how it happened is a perfect anecdote about mutual respect between generations and the creation of a modern masterpiece.
I've been working on this actually since I was little, or it's like a dream.
It all started when Josh Homme received a completely unexpected text message out of the blue from Iggy Pop, suggesting they try writing some music together. For Homme, who considered Iggy one of his ultimate heroes, it was a dream come true. They decided to work in complete secrecy. The anecdote of their process sounds like a rock and roll fantasy. Iggy sent Homme a package of lyrics and notes. Homme then invited Iggy to his home studio in the California desert at Joshua Tree. They assembled a secret supergroup to be their backing band. They all lived and worked together at the desert studio, completely cut off from the outside world, with no record label or managers involved. It was a pure creative collaboration. Holmes' goal was very specific. He wanted to create an album that would serve as a spiritual successor to Iggy's legendary Berlin-era albums from the 1970s, The Idiot and Lust for Life, which he had made with David Bowie.
After all this is just an attempt to steal moments out of the sky and make them yours and just hold it for a second, then let it go. You know what I mean?
Ohm wanted to capture that same feeling of dark, sophisticated, and world-weary rock and roll. The result was a triumph. Post-Pop Depression is a powerful, emotional, and beautifully crafted album that sounds both like classic Iggy and something entirely new. Holmes' production is rich and textured, and the band plays with incredible power and sensitivity. The collaboration showed how much Iggy still loved to create new music and was willing to trust a younger generation of artists with his legacy. Queens of the Stone Age and their musical world provided the perfect backdrop for Iggy to reflect on his life, his career, and his mortality. The subsequent tour was a massive success, with the band playing the new album alongside deep cuts from Iggy's Berlin records. The entire project was a testament to Iggy's passionate and ongoing love for music, proving that even after 50 years, the Godfather of Punk was still creating vital, exciting, and powerful art. Iggy's legendary chaos was never random. It was always fueled by a deep, passionate love for music. From primal garage rock to modern desert noir, his body of work is a tribute to his heroes. Now tell us, which artists fuel you? Like and subscribe for more.